everybody. Good morning. It's Monday, June 15th, and it's time for another episode of Chatting with Agnes and Cecilia. I am one of your co-hosts, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips. We're a company that offers 501c consulting services and association management services and works with clients to create distinctive projects. My co-host, colleague, and friend, Agnes Amos Coleman, can't be with us today because of some schedule conflicts. So hello on behalf of Agnes, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global audience, wherever you may be. So today we're really excited. We have Beth Sperber Richie here from Fermata Consulting, and today we're going to talk about something that's actually one of Beth's favorite topics, burnout. Today's topic is no burnout required, reduce stress, not effectiveness. And so I'm really pleased to welcome Beth to our show today. Hello, Beth. Would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, Cecilia. Thank you. I'm sorry Agnes can't be here, so I can't meet her, but it's nice to see you again. My name is Beth Sperber Richie. I am the principal of Fermata Consulting. My focus is on helping nonprofits figure out good ways to sustain their staff to deal with the long-term difficult work that they all are doing, important and difficult work. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk about burnout because, as you mentioned, it's one of my favorite things to focus on.
Now, okay, I'm kind of laughing about that because most of us do not consider burnout a favorite topic. So
yeah, I know.
Why do you consider burnout a favorite topic?
So given my clinical background, I've spent 25 years working with trauma survivors. So, this is a light topic for me. Burnout is kind of an everyday sort of thing. It's so much lighter. But I think the thing that got me excited about burnout and working with nonprofits on burnout is that there was sort of this sense I got from talking to folks over and over again that burnout is kind of inevitable in the nonprofit sector and that there was sort of nothing people could do about it. And I thought that just doesn't have to be true. And so my focus and my goal is to help people sustain their staff because the staff carries so much with them. And when they burn out or they get vicarious trauma and they leave the organization and there's turnover, it costs the organization's money in terms of having to hire and, the time and energy that folks put into the hiring process and training new people. But they lose so much. They lose the relationships that those staff members have built over time, and they lose the historical knowledge that that staff member has, and they lose the relationships that they've built with the funders, with, board members, with volunteers in the organization. And so they lose so much more than just losing a person because of burnout. And it just seemed to me like this is a great way to help nonprofits keep going.
And Beth, you are singing my song. I have been saying that for a number of years, not specifically related to burnout, but about the value that the individuals have in the organization on the staff for all the reasons you just said. And it's why I counsel people, if you need to cut your budget, do not cut your staff.
Yes.
That is your most valuable asset, and it always is. So you mentioned burnout in the nonprofit profession specifically. So what are some of the things you've heard from people about what's causing them to burn out? How do they react to burnout? How do you help them?
All good questions. I think the thing that people say the most when you talk to staff members, I think the thing they say the most is we have too much work to do and not enough resources to do it. I think the leadership of organizations, of nonprofit organizations, I tend to hear more about the focus on, and this is true for staff members as well, but the focus on these really huge problems. I always refer to this work, nonprofit work, as a marathon and not a sprint.
Right.
And I think it's really important for people to realize that you run a marathon at a different pace than you run a sprint. And even within a marathon, there are periods of time where you push harder and then you taper back a little bit and take it a little bit slower. So my goal in helping folks is for them to recognize that if they care about this work, which almost everybody who goes into nonprofit work does,
Right.
If you care about it, you're gonna burn out because there's so much to do and there's always another hill to climb.
That's right.
So my goal is to get people to slow down a little bit and taper where they need to taper and take breaks. And I think there's this sense among nonprofit staff, if they are not feeling burnt out, they're actually not doing their job.
Oh my gosh. No, no, not at all.
Exactly.
I'm just kind of like, wow, because I have been working in nonprofit industry, profession, whatever there's a dispute about if it's a profession or an industry, but let's say profession, since 1988 in some capacity, either as a staff person or a consultant or a CEO. I'm also very active volunteer with groups that I belong to. So hearing some of these things, it's like the myths. We had Michael Butera on a few weeks ago, and he talked about myths of hard and soft skills. And there's, I think, a lot of myths in nonprofit work.
Absolutely.
Like, you have to do everything everybody says. You have to work 18 hours a day, work on your vacation. These are all myths, and these are what lead to burnout. And burnout's not just a physical thing. It is a mental and emotional burnout. And when I was a CEO, it was a virtual organization that I ran for about 18 months. And I had a staff that, of course, all virtual, worked from home, right? I couldn't get them to stop working.
Yes.
And I would say to them, and I want to hear your comments on that too, but I would say to them, I know how much you make. We're not paying you enough to work this much. That's fact.
I have to say you're an unusual nonprofit leader if you were saying that. But you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, and
probably, Beth, why I'm not a CEO any longer, because I'm an unusual one. Sorry. Try to laugh about it.
I think it's wonderful. I think one of the things that you said, like, well, how do we help prevent it, is we develop more CEOs that have that attitude. I mean, I would love to hear that from my EDs and CEOs, where they're saying, oh yeah, I see the emotional signs in you. I see that sadness or that anxiety that wasn't there before. I see your sense of cynicism, or you're feeling overwhelmed. All of those are emotional signs of burnout. There's physical signs. People have insomnia. They're not eating healthy. They have headaches. They have stomachache, all sorts of things that you can see both physically and emotionally. If I had more CEOs who saw that and said, hey, the fact that you're sending me an email Saturday night at 9 p.m. is probably related to this burnout, or this sense of burnout, or your cynicism about the work, or you're feeling like, you can't concentrate, so you have to work even more hours because you couldn't concentrate during the hour, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think you'd be in better shape.
And exactly. And it's one of the things that drives the mission of Rogue Tulips is Agnes and I have known each other for a few years. I actually used to be her boss. That's how I met her. And now we work together. But she wrote a book called Transforming Business Through Godly Governance, and it reviews 9 leadership characteristics that she had found, and then talks about how you can be the compassionate leader. You can bring compassion, you can bring thoughtfulness, you can bring empathy to being a leader and helping your staff. And you also find it, I'd like to hear your take on this. It's something I found working with this virtual staff that worked like way too many hours, in my opinion. Me working 18 hours a day was different. I was a CEO and I knew how much I was making, and it was more than them. So the thing is, and it was, on me to make sure everybody was taken care of, in my opinion. Now, some CEOs don't feel that way,
right?
But that's another thing. But I found the staff getting distracted by things that absolutely didn't matter at all, like titles. And that was something I missed. That was something I tripped over, not realizing how important titles were to them in that culture. And so do you find that when you're working with your clients, do you find that they get distracted by things that don't really matter?
I think they get distracted by it. And I think in some level, it's their job to be distracted by it, right? Like, so if I'm working in the nonprofit sector and my job is fundraising, obviously I'm focused on fundraising. Right now, I probably would be even more focused on fundraising than normal, because I feel like, okay, this is a difficult time for nonprofits and I need to make sure that the money's coming in so that we can keep doing the work that we do. But something like titles is, first of all, in the nonprofit sector, I find titles, they mean completely different things at different organizations, right? Like the director at one place is a different set of responsibilities than a director at another. So yes, I could imagine them getting distracted by that. But I do think that what happens a lot of times is that nonprofit staff get so wrapped up in the doing of their jobs, right? In planning the event, although currently that means online, but in planning the event, or in focusing on the fundraising, or on, working on developing the board meeting that would be most appropriate, they lose track of the mission. And one of the things that has been clear, I've done some research interviewing executive directors and presidents and CEOs of nonprofit organizations. And one of the things that's coming clear to me over and over again is I hear that theme: you have to stay in touch with the mission. And so it's easy to get lost and confused and wrapped up in those small details, like what's my title, or small details like, do we have enough muffins for the meeting, and lose track of, why did I start this work in the first place? Why did I, the direct ED, why did I begin, the founder, why did I start this organization? But also, why did I agree to work for less money for this nonprofit? I agreed to work for it because I believe in the cause. I believe in the purpose and the mission. So when we lose track of that, or we get disconnected from that, that also can lead to burnout, because we're working really hard for not a lot of money and we forget why we're there in the first place. So I really encourage people to do things to connect themselves with the mission.
So do you find a different kind of burnout with chief staff executives than you do with other staff members?
That's interesting. So far in the research that the leaders that I've talked to, for the most part, they're not burnt out. And I don't know if that's because the leaders are in touch with the mission on a regular basis, or if it's just the leaders I'm talking to are in touch with the mission on a regular basis, right? They are more likely to be, the talking head for the organization. So they're out doing public speaking on the topic. Right. They're out meeting the folks who they serve. They're out fundraising, which means they have to talk about the mission of the organization all the time. So I'm wondering if that might be actually a protective factor. But so far, the CEOs and EDs that I'm talking to are not actually burnt out. They're just working really hard.
Good to hear. Because, I was just kind of thinking, and kind of in a funny way, but also it's like, how can you be talking to you if you're not burned out? It's kind of, okay, I'm not saying that the way I want to say it. It's like, they're probably talking to you because they're not burned out. The burned out ones aren't talking to you, and that's probably the problem, is what I'm trying to say. So
that's a very valid point.
So what are some
self-selected group for sure?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, I love that connection to mission, though, because so many of the staff outside of the C-suite leadership don't necessarily relate or tie themselves to the mission. And I think that's something that does help with burnout. We have about 3 minutes left in our episode today. This has been like such a fun conversation, even though it's not necessarily a fun topic.
I know.
So you definitely have to come back and talk with us again.
That'd be great.
What are some tips for you for, first of all, an individual like ourselves to identify if we're getting burned out? And then if you're a leader, how can you identify it in your staff?
Yeah, so the same thing, right, for the leader to look for in their staff and themselves, and for staff members to look. If you start to feel sort of burdened by your work, if you're starting to, you used to have kind of energy and excitement about the work, you got excited when you got the job, or you got excited to switch to this particular organization. If you start to see that you now feel sort of burdened by your work, like, I have to, go to work or whatever. It's not uncommon for nonprofit leaders and staff people to ignore sort of those physical signs of distress: insomnia, unhealthy eating, headache, stomachache, more frequent illness, more frequent colds, that kind of stuff. I always encourage people to talk to the people around them who know them best. Like, are your family members or dear friends saying to you, you seem more cynical, or I don't see you as frequently, because isolation is often a sign of burnout. People who overwork, they don't take breaks, they don't enjoy their work as much. All of those or they feel bored with the work that they're doing, when in fact in the past it was interesting to them. Other people could notice, like, are they taking care of themselves the way they used to? Have people, put on a lot of weight because they're not exercising, or they're eating unhealthily, or they've lost a lot of weight? Any of the sort of physical signs where the person doesn't look like themselves. And for supervisors in organizations to notice, like, this person used to be a solid worker and used to produce solid stuff, and it's not happening anymore. They don't seem to be able to concentrate as well. And internally to check for sort of feelings of hopelessness or powerlessness, like, this problem is too big, I can't help these folks anymore. Any of those things are good signs to look for, both in yourself and for the people who work for you.
So, Beth, as we're closing out this episode, What is the one thing you'd like the audience to take away from this conversation? And then how can they get in touch with you if they're feeling traumatized or burned out and want to talk with you?
So the one thing I'd like people to say is how to figure out a way to develop a practice to be in touch with your mission, right? You came to this organization for a reason. You know, there's something that pulled you, that drew you in, there was a passion there for the work that you're doing. So to try and figure out what that is, whether that's visualizing what the world would look like if your work was done, whether that's reading inspirational stories, whether that's being in touch with the people you serve, if you've gotten out of touch, whatever it is that works for you. And it's going to be individual for each person, to do that as a regular practice. And of course, eat healthy, exercise, get enough sleep, do all those self-care things. But more importantly, be in touch with the mission as a regular habit. And in terms of how people can get in touch with me, I'd love to talk to folks about this or any other related topic. You can reach me at fermataconsult@gmail.com. So FERMATACONSULT
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, Beth. We've had a fun conversation about a not so fun topic, but you've made it seem less like a boogeyman.
I'm so glad.
Thank you for that. And, you know, they say laugh instead of cry. So I think that's going to help a lot of us right now, especially in the aftermath of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
As the year goes on in 2020. So I want to thank Beth Sperber Richie again of Fermata Consulting for joining us. And we will definitely be having Beth back maybe in the fall or late summer to see if we've all bitten our fingernails off by that point.
I hope you won't have, but I'd be happy to come back and talk about it.
But we will definitely have you back. Thanks again. And on behalf of myself and Agnes, thanks for watching this week to our audience. If you'd like to learn more about Rogue Tulips, you can check us out at www.roguetulips.com. We're also supporters of the 501c League and a virtual membership organization for everyone in the 501c community and the people who love them. You can check out the League at the501cleague.net. The League's offering a couple of courses right now you might want to check out for CAE credit. And as Agnes and I always like to say, take 15 minutes and talk to somebody because you might learn something. So we hope you learned something today. We have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Bye.